Hi students, I want to assist you in writing your claim evidence and reasoning paragraph that you are responsible for when investigating a scientific question using your catapult. I thought that would be best to do by using a different scientific question and investigate that, collect some data, use the data that we collect as evidence, and then reason how science helps us support why the evidence matches that claim. The scientific question we will explore will be related to gravitational potential energy. Here's the scientific question. What is the relationship between the mass of an object and its gravitational potential energy? We're going to use this scientific question to collect some data. What is the relationship between the mass of an object and its gravitational potential energy? We will use the gizmo that you're familiar with from lesson 3 called Potential Energy on Shelves. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you what a data table might look like when I'm collecting information about the relationship between the mass of an object and its gravitational potential energy. I'm going to start with the paper clips. If I put the paper clips on the first shelf, I can see that there is 0.39 joules of gravitational potential energy. If I move the paper clips to the second shelf, I have 0.78 joules of gravitational potential energy. If I move the paper clips to the third shelf, I have 1.18 joules of gravitational potential energy. Now let's compare that to an object with more mass, the ball. If I put the ball on the first shelf, the ball has 0.98 joules of gravitational potential energy. If I put the ball on the second shelf, the ball has 1.96 joules of gravitational potential energy. If I put the ball on the third shelf, the ball has 2.94 joules of gravitational potential energy. I could take this data and I could average the amount of joules the paper clips have and the amount of joules that the ball has in terms of gravitational potential energy. Now I could take this data and I could make a graph out of it. Let me show you an example of what data might look like from this data table on a graph. Let's make a bar chart. And let's clear this information and show you what that would look like from the beginning. The paper clips on the first shelf, again, were 0.39 joules. The paper clips on the second shelf were 0.78 joules. And the paper clips on the third shelf were 1.18 joules. Now, if I take the ball, I can see the ball has 0.98 joules on the first shelf. And on the second shelf, I can see that the ball has 1.96 joules. And I can see the ball on the third shelf has 2.94 joules of gravitational potential energy. When I look at the paper clips information compared to the ball's information about the amount of gravitational potential energy each has, I can clearly see from the data table that I made that the ball definitely has more gravitational potential energy at the same height when it's compared to the paper clips. Let's put the ball on the second shelf and the paper clips on the second shelf. We will notice that the paper clips still have less gravitational potential energy. And if we put the ball and the paper clips on the first shelf, we can see again that the ball has much more gravitational potential energy compared to the paper clips. So when we're investigating what is the relationship between the mass of an object and its gravitational potential energy, the data I have just collected is evidence to support that the more massive an object is, the more gravitational potential energy it will have if it is at the same height as a different object. Let's take a look at what a claim evidence and reasoning writing sample would look like after collecting data on the gravitational potential energy of two different objects with two different masses. A reminder of the scientific question: what is the relationship between the mass of an object and its gravitational potential energy? Our claim is an object with more mass will have more gravitational potential energy compared to an object of less mass at the same height. When you share your evidence, you should use the data you collected on the ball and the paper clips. This can be shared in a bar graph or words. And before you reason, you must brainstorm what you know already about the science behind gravitational potential energy. We know that gravitational potential energy is potential energy that is created due to the position or height an object has off the ground. We also know that there are two factors that influence gravitational potential energy, and that is mass and height. I will use what I know and what I've learned in science to explain why my evidence supports my claim. Here's my reasoning in green. An object with more mass has more gravitational potential energy. My evidence shared that the ball had more joules of gravitational potential energy compared to the paper clips when on the same shelf. The shelves represented different heights. Mass is a factor that influences the amount of gravitational potential energy an object will have. Height is also a factor that influences the amount of gravitational potential energy an object will have. My data shows that the ball and paperclip on the same shelf had different amounts of gravitational potential energy. The ball always had more gravitational potential energy when compared to the paperclips on the same shelf. I can assume if I had a heavier object than the ball, that it would have more gravitational potential energy than the ball and paperclips at the same height. I hope this video helped you write your claim evidence and reasoning for the scientific question that you are investigating. Remember, you need to collect data and use that data to support your claim, and then you need to reason by using what you've learned about something in science and how it connects to the data you collected and how it supports why that data supports your claim. I hope this has helped you when you think about how to write your CER for the scientific question you're investigating related to your catapults. Great job listening. You may play parts of this video back anytime you need to, and I hope this was a helpful tutorial for you on writing a CER.